I've been giving a good deal of thought lately about how my thinking has changed over the years. Um, some of it I realize has been there, somewhat under the surface maybe, but with the uh, slaughter in Gaza, uh, my and the war in Ukraine, my thoughts have bubbled more to the surface. Finally, I said something to my younger daughter. Hell, have to go clearing my throat just when I'm getting off to a wonderful start. ah, I'll get you, Rick, to cut off the first uh, 50 some seconds of this, and then I'll start over with take two. I have been reflecting a lot lately about how my thinking has changed over the years. Uh, some of it has been there a while, but it's now really bubbled to the surface with the two big wars we've got that we're funding in Ukraine and in Israel. Uh, I would go back and show you this. It's one of the only curios I have accumulated in my life, with the addition of, if you want to call them curios, the Indian baskets and beaded bags that I have. But I acquired this in 1956 when I was a 17-year-old exchange student to Sweden. And when I got there, I was bombarded by some teenage males about the United States foreign policy. I was totally caught off guard by that. I'd been taught on the ship on the way over that the American Field Service motto was walk together, talk together, O ye peoples of the earth, then and only then shall ye have peace. And they told us that we should become family with the people we stayed with in the interests of international understanding and peace. I was all pumped up about that. By then, I was freshly elected student body president of my high school, and I had been networking like crazy for 3 years and reaching out to my fellow students. But I was shocked when these guys started getting on me. And they kept saying, oh, the United States, the biggest in the world. Well, I'd heard some of that about Texas, but I'd never heard anybody saying that our whole country was throwing its weight around and claiming to be the biggest in the world. And I tried to argue with them, but they told me, look, you guys in the United States are stoking a Cold War with Russia, and those rockets, if they ever are fired, will come right over Sweden. Probably some of them will land on us by accident. So we don't like it that you in the United States are stoking a Cold War with Russia. And of course, I was well imbued about the Cold War, but I had no idea that there were two sides to the story, or that anybody could look at it in any kind of a neutral way. To me, it was all about Russia was bad and we were good, and so on. Well, I struggled with that the whole time I was there. It didn't get me down, but it really knocked the peak off of my sense of righteousness about the United States a little bit. Didn't keep me from immediately joining the National Guard when I turned 18 a year later to protect our sacred values of freedom and all men are created equal. That was, I thought, the mantra of the United States. But it did stick in my mind a little bit. As things progressed, of course, I eventually became very much against the Vietnam War because I could see that that was the United States uh, beating up on a small country and killing lots of people and killing a lot of American soldiers too. But I don't want this to turn into a long analysis of uh, international law and politics. I just want to explain how my mind developed, my thoughts developed. Well, so I was against the Vietnam War. I demonstrated against it. I helped shut San Francisco State down for 7 months, protesting the war and the lack of black studies classes. But the thing that I saw as a horrible mistake we were making in Vietnam. And of course, in 1975, our former AFS exchange student that lived with my family for a year, and his wife and two children came to live with my mom and dad in August of 1975. They were terrified, run out of their country by Pol Pot. I still thought that was part, to some extent, I still thought that was part of communism crowding around. I was only later, when I went and visited Chai-Born Lai in 2012, that I learned more about that Pol Pot was a locally homegrown radical who wasn't primarily interested in communism. He was interested in nationalism. But the thing that really hit me over the head was in 2009 or 10, when the guy who released the Pentagon Papers developed a movie called The Most Dangerous Man in America. And he meant Richard Nixon. And he detailed in that movie how Nixon triggered the deaths of over 1 million Cambodians by lying in the political campaign of 1968, saying that he had a secret plan to end the war, and then when he got elected, he began bombing Cambodia. And knowing that by then that he couldn't win that war with Vietnam, but he wanted to show he was tough and flex his muscles and kill people. So when I saw that movie, at the end of the movie, its author, who was there with it, got up and said, "I told you I would take questions at the end of the movie. Are there any questions?" And so I stood up, and I guess maybe because I'm tall, he called on me first, which surprised me. But I said, "Do you think that now that this war has gone on over 10 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, that the American people are beginning to figure it out, that this isn't getting us anywhere?" And he said, "Well, I can't give you a definite answer for that. But what I can tell you is in my 80 years of life, I have come to two conclusions. One is it's very easy to talk people into war all over the world, all the countries. It's very easy to talk them into a war. Number two, the United States has no idea that we're an empire." And that rocked me back. And I thought about it. Then I saw the movie by the man who was blamed for talking LBJ into throwing it all in on the Vietnam War. And he made a movie at the end of his life to kind of try to improve his legacy a little bit and point out that there were other people doing evil things. It wasn't just him. He outed Harry Truman for having been told that the war in Japan was over, that we had bombed over 70 cities with LA on fire right now. those cities burned up like tinderboxes uh, when we bombed them with conventional bombs. But Truman was encouraged and decided that he would go ahead and drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki so we'd have a stronger bargaining position with Stalin after the war on who was going to get which Eastern European country. Oh, is that relevant to what's happening on Ukraine right now? So Robert McNamara, in his movie The Fog of War, lays bare that we didn't need to drop those bombs at all. Now, the narrative in the United States is that we would have had to go on and fought on the islands where there were Japanese soldiers holding out, and we would have had to go from cave to cave, and there would have been millions of American soldiers killed. Well, of course, if the homeland had surrendered, there wouldn't have been any supplies to those guys, and what would they have done? Run around and eaten worms to live in their caves? No, that wasn't going to happen. But the people in this country, universally, they believe that the dropping of those bombs was justified to end the war quickly and save American infantrymen. So I began to get real disillusioned about the United States and our foreign policies. And then I've said some things that has made my daughter uncomfortable. And so I guess I'm kind of saying all this to justify my bitterness. We didn't need to do these things. We need to value human beings. All human beings are equally valuable. And if Harry Truman called the Japanese rats, as Robert McNamara claimed he did, that ain't good. That isn't good. And of course, the Palestinians are of equal value to me and my friends. We're all human beings. And if we believe in a religion that leads us off into some unfortunate attitudes about people, that's unfortunate. But that doesn't justify slaughtering us. So that's a little long, 12 minutes, but that's a little account of how I went from being a complete believer in I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. I had this vision of myself flying over foreign countries and protecting our way of life, our values. I didn't think about killing people, but I saw myself in the plane, and that would be a great show of force, and people would then kind of acquiesce to our demand for liberty and freedom. Oh boy, it was later that I learned that we were flying over villages in Vietnam and dropping napalm on huts and burning people alive. And I learned later that we flew over villages in Nicaragua in the 80s and dropped napalm and burned people alive. This isn't right. And it also doesn't work. Vietnam, they now have, I understand, Starbucks in many corners, and in Nicaragua, it's a vibrant economy. Everybody has medical care. And this horrible communist, Daniel Ortega, is building roads, having public education for free. When he took over, the literacy rate in Nicaragua was staggering. They had no public schools. Now everybody goes to school, children. Think of it. This is a hysterical Much of this is a hysterical response to people fearing countries that provide medical care for all. They call that communism, because the people who can afford it in this country simply don't want to pay for it. So that's probably too long, but it's what I believe and what I've learned.